Hi, Sophia.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good, thank you.
Welcome to Tasty Humans. Thank you for doing this. I'm very excited about this, and I know you are as well. But for everybody watching, please introduce yourself and why are you here?
My name's Sophia, and I'm passionate about education reform.
Fantastic. So I always like to start at the beginning, and this particular subject, I think, is a bit of a hot topic at the moment, and I think it has been for a few years. But where did you go to school, and what was your schooling like?
So I went to school many, many years ago. I started schooling in a little village in the UK, in Dorset. And my dad would never take us to school. So for that school, I ended up walking up a massive hill to get to school. And then every subsequent school that I went to, I had to get my own way there. So I remember like cycling in all weathers, like 5 miles there, back, like wearing like full waterproofs. Like nothing would stop us having to cycle to school and back. So, you see those programs where they say, oh, you should feel very privileged living in the West, and they show like school journeys through jungles. Yeah. That was actually me.
Yeah, I remember the same thing. I was at school in the Midlands of England, and we would cycle. And it's great in, May, do you know what I mean? September, do you know what I mean? But in January, that is not a lot of fun. But builds resilience from an early age.
And actually I think it's given me a certain fitness level that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Did you enjoy school?
Good question. I think I enjoyed it sometimes and then didn't at other times. So, I kind of have a kind of mixed kind of opinion about it, to be honest, my schooling.
And what were the sections? So expand on that. Like what sort of sections did you enjoy, first of all?
I think, I'm not sure actually. I think just the learning. I'm a very curious person. So if I liked the subject, then I was really engaged in trying to find out more about it. And project work. I love the arts. So anything creative I was really into. Sports, things like that. Mostly.
And what were the things that you didn't like?
Quadratic equations or whatever they're called, quadratic equations.
Oh,
all those maths things that you spend hours and hours and hours practicing that you never use. Like, when would you even use it?
I don't know. I really like that. Maths was one of my strong ones.
Oh, okay.
History, geography were the two that stand out to me now I think about it, that I was bored to tears.
Oh, no.
But maths...
I think it depends on the teacher, though, doesn't it, as well? Like, I had a really
100%.
good geography teacher who used to make everything funny, and we used to go on really cool geography trips. So that made it exciting and fun.
Now, you went on to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So what propelled you to take that step?
I did about 40 other jobs, at least 40 other jobs.
Okay.
And I decided that I didn't want to be just working for financial profit. I wanted to do something to help other people. And that kind of led me into working as a learning mentor, which was a role in the UK they started to help remove barriers to learning that kids had. So it's a bit like a counsellor. So that's how I got into education. And
what sort of barriers did you find that kids had? Like, were you working with underprivileged kids or normal kids or privileged kids? Or
I was in like a school in the UK in Milton Keynes that had I think a low income catchment area, but also the parents were not educated. So they were low income and not educated. So a lot of the barriers to learning there were just no one in their family was educated. So they didn't see it as something important.
Wow, that's quite a hectic statement that the parents are not educated, so they didn't think education was important.
Yeah, or they had bad experiences of school, so they were not pro-school. And actually that school in the end decided that in order to educate the children, they would also have to educate the parents.
And how did that function sort of happen? The parents are joining the children, or
no? So I think they were opening up the school in the evenings for night school and kind of courses as well.
And how did the parents receive that?
I can't remember because I was actually leaving at that point when that was decided. So I'm not sure even how they implemented it.
Okay. And then, so what were your first steps into proper teaching, classroom teaching?
So I did that, and then I did a TEFL course. So I'm qualified to teach adults English. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I had a bit of a baptism of fire. I went into unqualified supply teaching.
Oh, wow.
Which is, they let you do that, which is a bit strange, isn't it? They would just let someone who's not qualified take a class as a supply teacher, as a cover teacher.
Oh, unqualified?
Yeah.
That's...
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's a bit dangerous for both parties.
Well, I mean, I'd obviously I had experience in schools, in the system. I'd seen teachers and I'd done like group work and things. I don't know if they would just take anybody, but I know that they do take some people with military backgrounds now, don't they? Especially in America.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Because they want people that can control a class.
And how were you received as a supply teacher? Because I remember being at school, and when suddenly your regular teacher that you were always a little bit afraid of wasn't there, and there was just this random person, there was kind of a all bets are off type attitude from the kids, especially me and my friends.
Well, I think I've got quite an intimidating like aura, whatever you want to call it. So I was kind of okay. And I remember one kid in one class saying to her friend, oh, you know, I think she's probably seen a lot worse than us, even though they were acting like really terribly. And so I thought, I look like I've kind of maybe seen like controlled like classes. So I ended up just doing what everyone does, which is just shout and threaten, basically.
Okay. Sorry.
Which I'm not proud of. I don't think really that is the way to go, you know, and I don't do that anymore now that I'm obviously more experienced. But yeah, I mean, when you feel fear, when you feel threatened, that's your natural reaction.
What age were the kids that you were shouting at and threatening?
So I've only ever taught teenagers.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, fair enough.
From about 11 upwards, 11 to 18.
And well, what were some of the things that you experienced? Because the reason I ask is that it's like, I think that being a teacher must be very, very, very challenging sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I remember what I was personally like at school, which I never got suspended or expelled, but it got quite close on occasion. And I wasn't violent, but I was super disruptive, you know, and cheeky, cocky, ignorant, you know, talk back. Yeah. And so, like, what were your experiences, you know, with kids?
I mean, good and bad. Like, you have some wonderful experiences where you really bond with kids and you can really help them. Because I taught English, so at least I felt like I was teaching a life skill as well as obviously a school subject. But then you have some kids who they do threaten you, and because you've got everyone in your class and they could come from like they might even have a mental illness, to be honest, because 1 in 10 people will end up with a mental illness, or from a background where they've been abused or whatever. So yeah, I've had a kid offered to shank me, which for people that don't know, it's stab.
Yeah.
I had another kid who had his arm in plaster offered to box me. So yeah, physical violence. I had one kid throw a chair across the room. I had another kid jump on a table with a stick. Yeah.
What years was this? What time periods are we looking at?
So this was probably maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say.
20 years ago. I mean, it still goes on though.
Yeah, 100%. I remember, you know, so I come from the school era where you got smacked around the legs from the teacher. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That happened to me. Some of my friends, you know, you got slap. Do you know what I mean? This is the 80s and the early 90s.
Yes.
And then you'd go home and you'd tell your parents the teacher slapped me. And then you would say, you know, what did you do? And then you tell them and you get slapped from your dad. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not advocating we bring back hitting kids. Yeah. But what I do remember that there was that fear from the teacher to you that you couldn't push it too far. And I don't know, has that left the school system? Do kids have a much bigger no fear of authority in adults?
I don't think so. Well, yes, for some kids, no, there's another kind of insidious kind of fear that's come out. The statistics for anxiety amongst young people are really high. Mm-hmm. And you could say that part of that is coming from a fear of authority, a fear of maybe the exams or failing, or there's lots of different things that cause this anxiety, for sure. I think you've always had kids that chat back like you do as well. I think that's been like...
Did.
And that's never going to... I think the system actually creates that environment where that happens.
Okay, and like I say, when you had these very challenging situations, like, how did you, I would say, because I want to understand, like, inside the mind of a teacher, do you know what I mean? It was like... At what point, what were the techniques that you used to control and to calm it down or remove them or whatever? How does that process go when you're dealing with kids?
It's an individual thing. You can't really... I mean, every teacher will have ways that they do it. So the correct way, or the way that we endeavour to treat young adults, is respectfully and to give them like a warning, humour them, maybe take them out, have a little quiet word with them. What often happens though, where you have like a lot of disruption and it gets out of hand, is you become a little bit scared. So you do shout, you do threaten. I mean, not physical threats, you just threats. You will just say you'll keep them in for their break. They're going to move places, things like that. You'll call their parents. Yeah.
And how do the parents react?
That is a bit of a bone of contention, actually, amongst teachers, because quite often the teachers are the people in the middle. Yeah. And quite often the kid will lie, will go home, and to protect themselves, they will say, oh, the teacher did this to me. And I've had incidences, both here and the UK, where I've been investigated for things that the kids have made up about me. Ridiculous things, which you would think an adult would be like, just basically dismiss it. But because...
Would you share any of those accusations? You don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, I had in the UK, I had a kid who was really disrupting my class, so I put him in detention, and he happened not to be white, so he went home and said I was racist. Okay. And so that got investigated, which was kind of ridiculous, because if you'd looked at his behaviour record, you would have seen, not just from me, but from other teachers as well, he was not behaving well in any class. So, any kind of sensible person would have said, look, actually, it's very obvious that this kid is not complying or abiding by the rules. This is why he's in trouble, not anything to do with what colour he is.
And if I can ask, how did the parents react? Did they back the child 100%, or did they back the school? Because, and I only speak from the amount of times that my parents were involved in my incidences at school, I'd say 9 out of 10 times they backed the school because they knew what I was like. And they were correct. You know what I mean?
I can't remember, this was quite a while ago. So honestly, I can't remember. But I do remember having a senior member of staff in my class with me, watching me for a week or so. Wow. Yeah.
That's mad.
It was intimidating. It's very intimidating. And a little kid can just say something and then that will happen as well. Which, I think there's some instances where children do need protecting. But also, I think a lot of it, common sense is not being used.
Well, this was what I was going to ask, is that it's such, and it was then, and I think it's been amplified so much more now, where it's such a grey area on where the lines are drawn. Yeah. Like I remember reading a piece in a national newspaper. I don't know, it was before I moved to Dubai, so it's over a decade ago, but it was about how teachers don't break up fights in the playground anymore. Now, when I was at school, fight would break out, everyone screams fight, everyone runs over, do you know what I mean? Everyone's like, and within a few minutes, the teachers have, bombarded in, grabbed the two kids, split them up, dragged them off. It's all the drama, do you know what I mean? Yeah, everything like this. And then the kids are in trouble, the kids are in real trouble, And I read this article where the the children were going home and they were telling the parents the reason their uniforms are ripped and everything is because it's when the teachers came in and grabbed them apart. And then the parents are suing the schools for the cost of the clothes and everything like that.
Well, that's crazy.
So the rule came in that you don't break up fights. And I think an important caveat for me to put in this is that I ran nightclubs and nightlife in the UK for a very long time. And I remember the rise in the change in the customers between, I suppose, 2002 and 2015, where the generation that came through, you know, the 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds back in maybe 2012, they were so quick to fight. They had no fear of doorman, police, anything. And I always liken it to, was that a trigger moment where at school you didn't fear, you know, having fights or fights being broken up, and you just carry that on coming out of school?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I always know from my perspective, I would always try and break up a fight. Yeah. So, yeah.
No, I just, like I say, it's never left me that, you know, seeing how, because I do believe that everything that happens to you in school, you take it on into definitely the first 10 years of your life coming out of school.
I think it affects you for the whole of the rest of your life, actually. In fact, there's a lot of adults who are having to they're trying to unlearn. It's 12 years of social conditioning. And it's at a time in your life. There's certain times in your life where your brain kind of wires itself up and makes all the connections. One is when you're very small, when you're making those. Another one is when you're a teenager. It kind of rewires when you're a teenager. So it's really, really important how we treat teenagers. It's very fundamentally important to the kind of adult that they will become. And
we've obviously spent some time talking about, let's say, the darker side of school. And I did want to ask you, in contrast that, what are some of like, I suppose say the best things you've seen from kids where they've completely wowed you with their personalities or their knowledge, their academia, you know?
I mean, that happens all the time. And that could be just some little moments, some like aha moments where they kind of have a personal breakthrough with something. Because that's the thing, when you're an experienced teacher, you're not just blanket teaching a whole class. You are making sure that every kid has access to the knowledge in a way that they find comfortable. That's why actually class size is probably one of the most important things that parents should be asking about when they're paying a lot of money for private schooling. So the teacher has that opportunity to help the kids individually, almost like a tutor within the class.
And what do you think is the ideal class size? Compared to what the class size let me reframe that question.
That's a good question.
What is the average class size?
So basically it's got bigger and bigger and bigger, both here and the UK. That's where I've had my experience. So I guess the average is probably around 25, but I have taught classes up to 34, 35, teenagers. Can you imagine?
Yeah, but that's hectic.
Yeah.
And so what do you think the right class size should be?
I think around 15 to 20, especially if parents are paying a lot of money for the education. They should actually say that they don't want any more than 20 in the class, I would say, yeah.
And can the parents control that? Like, can they
could put pressure on the school, especially obviously they're the client, essentially, when they're paying for their kid to be in school. But I think it's something that maybe people don't think about, or they don't realise the importance of it.
Okay. Now, class size is not the only thing you think needs to change. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so what do you think needs to change? This is how we met, you know.
So it's a very complex subject, really. I just think initially there needs to be a lot more options. Because if you bear in mind, we're all individuals, we're all very different, we have different needs. And a young person growing up needs access to knowledge that's going to help them in their particular field that they're going to go into when they're older. So I think this blanket teaching everything to every single child above a certain age is a waste of everyone's time.
And what makes you think it's a waste?
Well, how much of what you learnt in school are you actually using?
So that's a very, very good question, you know, and I thought about this a lot leading up to this.
Okay.
Because it's everything that the human race has produced has come off the back of us all going through some form of schooling system. So everything that we've got, good and bad, has come from going to school. I
don't think that's true.
Okay.
What about a farmer who's actually managed to come up with a new way of growing crops? Would they have learnt that in school?
But,
no. What about
okay.
Yeah, there's
on.
actually loads of breakthroughs that have happened. In fact, it's one of those geniuses, was it Einstein or someone, who actually got taken out of school because he was deemed as being not kind of suitable, not intelligent enough. So this is another issue where you have someone who's so outside the box that they are actually an evolutionary pioneer in a biological sense, but they're not fitting into this one-size-fits-all system.
Because I definitely believe so speaking to you, knowing we were going to do this, I did start to think what do I use that I used at school, and the answer is nothing. If I sat and looked at it in the fact of I did maths, okay, I use maths. You know, we all use.
Basic maths. You could have learnt that in a week. Like adding and subtracting and what other maths do you use in your daily life?
No, that's true. But I
learned maths in working behind a bar more than I ever did in school, because you had to actually add everything really up in your mind.
But the thing is that I left school and I was an engineer for 4 years, and that was because we called it craft design and technology. So I did that at school and I really liked it. And I liked art and I liked music. And I liked anything creative. I was bored to tears in anything. There wasn't, and I found maths to be creative because it was like trying to build those pathways between the numbers. And when I went into engineering, because I was good at maths, carried that on very, very well, because at that time it was all trigonometry and CAD drawing and all kinds of stuff, you know. But you obviously use your language, you know. Now, have I used physics and biology? No. Did I ever use Spanish? No. So I get it. Do I use history? No. Geography? No. But I don't know, like my question is that then what should we be doing? Because you are right. We don't use a lot, but then...
I just want to, before we go on to that question, just point out what you're taught in school that you don't even realise you're being taught. And that is to be compliant to obey orders, to not actually... think that you have control or autonomy in any of your time, in any of what you do in a day from a very young age. So we're basically controlled, and you learn how to be controlled. And if you are kicking off about that and you don't want it, you are punished. If you are good, and you allow yourself to be controlled, you are rewarded. So that's for 12 years you've learned that. So that is something that you're talking about, the darker side of school. That's one of the insidious kind of underlying things that you will learn, but you don't know that you're learning it. It's not on your qualifications.
Just to be objective, like, do you think that... So, okay, because do we need, as a society, to be programmed to a certain degree to follow some type of societal norms? Because if not, we're all completely out of control.
So this is...
And is that... Yeah, so go on.
So I don't think that... Okay, so you're saying control, out of control. Actually, what we should be aiming for is self-control.
Okay, that's
and
interesting.
Self-control within the umbrella of like altruism, where you're doing things that's the best for the society. And if you look around the world, there are some cultures. I mean, in Japan, for instance, they teach young children are cleaning the school and cooking. So they learn from a very young age. It's not just about them. It's not them as an individual. It's them as an individual and how they function in a larger society. So I think that's what you mean, isn't it? That's because then they're not out of control because they want to be part of something.
Well, it's more like, right or wrong, the human race has built a society over however many years that has rules and has principles and has punishment and has law. And I'm a podcaster. I am a massive advocate for free speech. I was actually, when you walked in, this was a conversation I was having outside with the other guy, which was everyone has the right to say whatever they want.
Yeah.
Right? But you also have to understand the repercussions of what you've just said and how that fits inside the grand picture of trying to go through every day on planet Earth and just get through it, which is kind of what a lot of people are trying to do. And so when it comes to how we are set in life, I totally agree. We are being prepared to go into the working world, to work with people. So we're kind of getting the base requirement that hopefully...
But I don't think it's the same world. And I think this is one of the issues. This system was made 150 years ago for the Industrial Revolution. Now we've got a lot of things automated, and that's going to become more so with AI taking over a lot of these kind of roles. So more and more people are becoming freelancers. More and more people are relying on their creativity and their innovation in order to come up with things that give them an edge in a market. And those things are specifically not really being taught in schools. In fact, there's no real way to measure them. And I think this is another issue. Something that's not measurable is not on a curriculum or not in an exam because it's not measurable.
100%.
But those are the skills which are actually we really need as a species moving forward.
Do the children know this?
Oh, of course.
Because back in my day, and of course, like I openly said, I don't have kids. I haven't put them through a school system. So my memories are 1992. We thought that this had a purpose.
I mean, it still has a purpose for some people. So I'm not saying, do away with school. I'm saying for some people, it's really is the ideal system for them. But probably for the majority now, it is not.
No, but I mean that's the whole point of what you're saying about how much it's changed, which is I think collectively we were all go to school, do exams, go to college, maybe university. If you're not going to do that, then I was an apprentice engineer. So I left school on a Friday. I started work full time on Monday morning.
Oh, wow.
And I went one day a week to college to do that side of it. But not at any point did I recall any of me and my friends were saying we were instantly going to start a business.
Oh, yeah. And actually that's changed completely. Like now, like when I ask a class of students, probably 70, 80% of them want to study business. That was unheard of, back in the day. No one wanted to study business. A few people would end up opening their own business, but that would be a minority. Now it's a majority. And
this is why I ask if they know this, is if they're coming to school and they're like, this doesn't make any sense. We thought it made sense, even though we didn't like it.
Yeah.
But do they actually speak up? Do you have conversations with children
absolutely,
where they're like...
Absolutely, and they don't put the effort in either unless they know it's going to contribute to their final grade or is actually important. So they're really over-learning for just the sake of learning as well. So the question will be, is it a formative or is it a summative? So is it like just a little test or is it going to count for something?
Wow.
Yeah. And that's actually, you touched on a really, really important point. With the amount of information available to young people, like the average 9-year-old even probably has more awareness, and even I could argue like some more, in particular areas, more knowledge than a 16, 17, 18-year-old would have had 10 or 20 years ago.
Yeah, my mind's racing.
So we don't even probably need people to be in an institution for 12 years. Solidly and this is kind of what I would like to see changing, more flexible options. So
what does that look like then?
Actually, there was the government did bring out something called Rahal a few years ago, which was an option where kids could be enrolled in a school and attend part-time and then do other things. I think this would be a really nice kind of halfway house between education as we have it now and more like freestyle, people putting together their own curriculums, their own timetables based on things that they need for their lives. So I think, if we're looking at ways to bring it in, that would be nice.
What year, what would be the age that this would begin?
So I think a lot of studies need to be done in that area, because immediately off the top of my head, I thought, 11. But then I met a 9-year-old the other day and I was like blown away by just their knowledge, their awareness. Maybe it doesn't even need to be an age. Maybe it needs to be when someone discovers their passion or actually wants to do something. Maybe we need to let people from a young age have more agency over who they are and what they want to do.
How much should parents be open to this?
And that's a really, really important one, especially like if you look at America, the homeschooling scene. So there's always this argument, like, should homeschooling be allowed? Should it not be allowed? One of the reasons against it is you get some really what do you call, maybe like a very religious parent or someone with extreme ideas who then has complete control over the way that their child is educated. So I think there does need to be some kind of control or some kind of procedure there. But also I feel like at the end of the day, it should really be up to the parents, shouldn't it, rather than the government to decide what.
Yeah, that's
that's a debate in the UK at the moment.
There has been certain narratives over the last 10 years that have shocked me, that teachers decide on behalf of the kid and don't let the parents have a lot of say in that. Okay. So a lot of it was to do with gender. It was that conversation.
Okay.
And it's not really something I think we should go into. But just to qualify my statement,
I agree. There was a lot of parents didn't like that either.
Yes, that was my point, which was this came in. And I was watching it from afar, in Dubai, looking back at the UK, and I was just thinking, okay, I don't understand why those questions are being asked in primary schools, and I just don't understand why. Now, I know what the arguments are for and against, but the question is, surely that's something to leave up to the child when they're coming out of puberty in the teenage years, because we've all been there. Do you know what I mean? Where you are a very confused teenager on that particular topic, not gender, but sexuality, and learning about that side of things when you come out of puberty. It's not something to ask a 10-year-old, in my humble opinion. So that's definitely something I looked upon, and I just thought that's not up to the school. That should be up to the parents.
In an ideal world, there wouldn't really be such a big difference between like a family situation and then the wider situation of a culture. But we are living in individualistic times, aren't we? Definitely. Where some people do. Well, they're permitted to kind of maybe go off on an extreme tangent, and then that will obviously affect the child and how they see the world.
This is the thing I want to sort of circle back to when it comes to the parents, which is not something, honestly, as extreme as the gender conversation, but more to do with, I went to a public school, so my child should go to a public school. I focused on sports, so my child will focus on sports. Yeah. So do you think too much of a parent sort of either thinking that molding their child into another version of them, or reliving their lives through their child, because they're like, I can influence your choices, so don't make my mistakes, go into that and do that. And where you've just said, you should ask the kid. I mean,
young people, they seek validation or they seek approval from their parents. There's no like training for being a parent either. Yeah. And this is maybe something as a cultural world we need to look into. Like, why is there no information? Why is it just it's on your life kind of stage thing? You get married, then you have kids, but no one really talks about what it means or how to be a good parent, or things that you shouldn't maybe carry on into parenthood if you've been affected by them. There's so many things, aren't there, that we don't talk about.
This is the thing.
And I think this is an issue. I think the world is waking up, and I think that we need to be talking about these things.
So what subject right now in the curriculum would you remove if you could? And say, in your opinion, which is vast, teaching, life, everything.
Yeah.
Like, what would be the one thing where you would go, I'm sorry, but that just is irrelevant now?
That's a really interesting question. I would say that would be different for everyone.
But that's the problem, isn't it?
It's not really a problem. And we have the technology now to make an ecosystem rather than a system. So we have the technology. So someone could be learning something different from the person sitting next to them. And schools could just be areas where children are kind of babysat during the day, and then they work independently. They maybe go to some classes with groups of other young people. Maybe they study on their own for some of the time. Maybe they go into a learning hub in a local business for part of the time. It could be a lot more intelligent and a lot more flexible.
How would you guarantee that the child is actually studying? If they're sat next to each other focusing on different things.
So this is the thing. Like, if you're forcing people to do something, as soon as you remove that force, all hell breaks loose, and because they're like, oh, we're free now.
Yeah.
If you don't do that at all, even from the beginning, but you have it as an expectation culturally and within your family and communities, that this is how we behave, it's a totally different thing. And you'll find actually that students are extremely motivated. Young people are extremely motivated if they're doing something that they are interested in. It's when you have to force them that you have all the problems. And we haven't even asked the question, why are we forcing young people to learn things? Like, is that like a human rights issue in itself?
What makes you say that?
Well, because...
It's a really good statement. Don't get me wrong. I just think that's a really, really good statement.
I think this is causing most of the trouble that, in schools, is the fact we are forcing children to do things. We shouldn't be. They should want to learn. In fact, they do want to learn, but maybe not exactly what we're trying to force them to learn, exactly in the time and the space that we are trying to force them to do it.
But then, I've had a similar thought experiment when it comes to finding out who's really into the job they're doing, which is if you turn around and say, okay, to your workforce, you try and say, okay, cool, next month I'll pay you, but you don't have to come to work. How many people take that month off?
I like this. That's really cool.
You see, how many people take that month off? Or how many people go, yeah, but I'm not just there for money? That's 4 weeks where I'm not going to continue my progression in learning what I'm actually there for. So therefore at school, for instance, if you said, come if you want, like how many kids?
So at the moment, probably most kids wouldn't come. And then they would get bored, and then they would come after a month or so, because look at what happened during COVID.
That's also very. Yeah, that's very.
So, but then that's only because they're used to being forced right from the very beginning. I think what we probably need to do is to run some experiments. In fact, it's already happening in the homeschool community. So you just need someone to gather that data, and then to apply it to see actually. Because if you speak to homeschooling parents, they have no trouble normally in motivating their kids. And those homeschoolers, they do better in all the exams. They're admitted to more universities than the ones in schools. They have better chances in their life to do well as well.
Is there any research or data that follows what socially happens to kids that were homeschooled when they go out into life, when they leave home? And that is sort of attached to the statement of, is part of going to school like learning how to develop your social skills around, especially schools in the UK, around and here as well, all different types of people. So how much of it is getting you, so it's a cliched statement, getting you ready for the world?
I think that, where homeschooling, when it's done well, is not just you stay in your home. In fact, maybe the name needs to change because actually it involves a lot of socialization, not only within peer groups at the same age as the child, but in kind of multi-age groups. So quite often you'll find that homeschooled kids will be a lot more confident speaking to adults or people outside of their age range. You also got to look at the incidence of bullying in schools, which is about 50% or higher actually, of either being bullied or witnessing bullying, depending on where you are in the world, to say, is it toxic socialization or is it healthy socialization?
That's a very good point. What do you feel the teachers want?
I think the teachers want autonomy. I think they feel like they are not treated as a proper profession. They have to be watched. They have to be graded even after they're qualified and have years and years of experience. They're quite often not involved in decision making in the schools where they're working. I mean, do they even need to be managed? Do you manage a doctor? And also, do you expect a doctor to also answer the phone and keep all the patient records, which is what you're asking teachers to do? Teachers have to look after the kids in break times. They have to input all the data. They have to, I think the role needs redefining, really.
Do you think it's got a lot to do with the fact that parents are handing you their most treasured possession, and because it also feeds into an observation I had about mobile phones in schools, which I just genuinely think is bizarre, that I spoke to somebody once who is advocating for mobile phones to be taken out of schools. Is that correct? No, actually, sorry, I lied. Okay. I was in a school, talking to teachers about, my partner has 2 children, so we were talking about getting them into a school. And we asked, are there mobile phones there? And they said no. They said, no, we don't allow it. And I actually asked, how has that gone down with the parents? And I remember now. And they turned around and they said some of the parents have really kicked off, saying I should be able to communicate with my child whenever I want, which I think is counterproductive in the sense of you take your child to school and then they experience from other adults and get all this experience and this sort of day-to-day process they go through at school, and then you come out and you go home and you tell your parents what happened. I don't know. I don't think it's healthy at all that they're carrying a device where they're getting outside. How's it going? Did they say that? Have they said that again? Well, you've got maths this afternoon. Make sure you don't do that. I
don't know how much that happens, but I know that in schools, children do use phones to record each other, to record lessons. Cyberbullying is quite big in schools. They're also cheating a lot. If you invigilate any exam during a class, I always have to look and see if they're looking down past the table onto their lap. I know that they've got a phone. They sometimes put the phones underneath the papers, so that's a big issue. I think if the parent needs to contact the child in an emergency, they can contact the school reception and the message can get to them.
What it was always like.
But then having said that, schools are brilliant. Phones are brilliant for if they need to look up words, if you want to do a quiz with a whole class. Most of them have tablets anyway, and most of the schools now run half the lessons on the tablets because, we have to integrate technology because that is going to be used in most people's workplace. So we can't just have no technology. I know it's a difficult one. I think we're still kind of trying to work it out, actually.
You said that the school system, so because we're flying through the time, do you know what I mean? And I have got a couple of things I really wanted to ask.
How much time have we got left?
We've got about 7 minutes.
Ooh.
It's gone fast, isn't it?
Yeah.
Might drag it out a little bit, you know what I mean? But the thing is that, I did actually look up how many children globally are enrolled into school every year. And it's 700 million. And I was like, wow. And you said that the school system has been around for 150 years.
Yeah.
And as I said to you when we first met, my opinion with this sort of stuff, there are people that want to criticize the banking system or the political system and the school system. And these are these big societal machines that have been created.
Pillars, aren't they? Of
and they've been created over time, which I do think with the best intentions to manage the population and give us all something to do and rules and regulations. Now, to change one, the biggest question is like, how? So my question is, you have unlimited resources. So I give you $100 billion or whatever, right?
Ooh.
But you have unlimited resources. How do you plot the transition, and how does the transition take place? And feel free to take as long as you want with that.
That's a really good question. So I think, because I've already looked at this actually and spent about 5 years researching and working with various different individuals and groups to come up with a solution. And something that's become apparent is that the mainstream schooling systems do not want to change, because obviously it's already in place. They have a lot of money involved. If you look at which I have actually, I've looked at the global profits for different curriculums and different education exam boards, stuff like this. They're literally going like this, and even schools, private schools, it's all going like this. So they're not going to want to change. In fact, the opposite is happening. They're trying to make it even stricter, make school even stricter, put all these things in place so that children stay learning the way that it's always happened. And they're putting a few add-ons. So they're saying, okay, we'll bring in some extra courses, or we'll let them do this outside of school hours. But basically, they want to keep it the same. So the only way to really change it, and to change it probably as quickly as it needs to change, I think, is to work with what's going on outside of schools. So build up the homeschooling, maybe change the name of it so that parents don't think that it just has to happen at home. Allow options so that parents can decide to put children in school part-time. So maybe they want to do GCSE maths or English, but then they want to do a specialist skill subject as well. Work with industries to build up skills courses. This is already happening, by the way, like people like Microsoft. They have like a whole load of free courses now, because they've realized that the population is not skilled up enough to be able to work for them. Even after university, they're coming out, they don't have the practical skills. So I think you're going to see a lot more industries putting together skills courses. And I think eventually schools are not going to be needed. I know that may sound controversial. They're going to become obsolete because basically they'll just be like institutions that offer qualifications which are no longer as relevant as the things that are offered in other ways, in other settings. There's something in America, it's called Moonrise, it's like a learning hub. I think we will see learning hubs, and they're going to become centres of communities. I think we're going to see a lot more teaching and learning happening in other settings, in other ways. I mean, there's no reason, if we don't call them schools, if we call them learning hubs, I mean, I could go in and learn something there, or I could go in and teach something there. You could as well. It doesn't have to just be for children.
I like that, yeah. The word learning over school, yeah.
Obviously, everyone needs to be checked to make sure that there's no criminals that have access to these places and that the children are protected. But teachers can come in and they could teach like a 2-hour English course that would lead to a qualification. Children can come in and take that course, and then they could maybe go and do some sports. If parents need the kids to be supervised all day, that would be done by a company that could do that. And it can do that either in a hub or it can do that in multiple locations. I just think we're going to have a lot more options.
What do you think the time frame is on something like that?
That very much depends on whether we can actually get probably funding for some pilots on this. And I'm already talking to people about that. But I'm not a business person, and this is an issue. Like a lot of people like me with ideas, we don't have necessarily, is it the right or the left brain that goes with that, which is coming up with a strategic plan. So I'm quite open to working with people who are more business minded to develop this further. What
has the response been to any of your outreach?
Very positive.
Okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. I think there's a massive gap, and especially here in the UK as well, there's a lot of people who are homeschooling. That's a growing sector.
Yeah, like I said, when we first started, it is a hot topic.
Yeah.
You know, it is.
Well, especially here because people are paying such a lot for education. It keeps coming back in the news, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think people that people like me, we came out of school and we were just like, oh, thank God that's over. You know, definitely.
Yeah.
There was definitely a sense of relief.
But you've been institutionalized. And I think this is not really grasped enough as well. It's almost like you've been imprisoned.
True. Yeah, no, definitely.
And should that, you know, should we be feeling like this? Should we be doing this even?
Oh, like, yeah. It's because I don't have kids.
Because it's so normalised, though, isn't it? It's so normalised that
there is one thing I think we should both admit, that we don't have kids.
Yeah.
So therefore, we don't see it from that perspective.
Having said that, I've got a sister and brother who have kids. I am a teacher, so I'm around 100%. Kids.
Oh,
so
I'm not trying to suggest for a second.
No, but I'm just saying it's not
you
like
have no experience. You know? No. You have oceans of experience because of your vocation. I'm the one with no experience. Do you know what I mean?
No, but you have experience because you have stepkids, don't you? Or like
as good as, but recently, well, you know, in the last year, they've come into my life. So you could say stepchildren. That's a hectic sort of statement. My partner will love that statement. But the thing is that
you have children in your life.
I have children in my life. The thing is, I've definitely, because of my line of work for a very long time, I dealt with teenagers, you know, because of nightlife.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier on, you see how much that changes. I think that, you know, one question I will definitely ask you is, so let's say I become all-powerful over the schooling system, and I turn around and I say, okay, I've decided I'm going to take history out of the curriculum. This is all pie in the sky, but I'm taking it out because I didn't like it's gone, right? So now there is, you know, one lesson in the curriculum that needs filling. What would you teach? What would you go? And I said, Sophia,
only one.
Well, no, but let's say, Sophia, like, you know, what's the most important thing you think that kids need? Because I asked you earlier on, what do you think they should? And you were correct. It's like, well, it's incredibly ambiguous. So let's say, I've made that decision for you, and I'm saying, what's the most important thing to teach kids now?
You're still framing it in the school system, though. I would take it out of that completely, and I would say there's hundreds and hundreds of subjects or skills which young people need. Hundreds. Let's just do away with subjects. Why are we even talking about subjects?
Fair enough.
Fair enough. We need
You're
skills.
Right. My head is just stuck in.
We need skills. We need competencies. We need things that they can use. And that's what excites children. If you tell like a 10-year-old, you're going to learn this and then you can make some money, like in the afternoon because you can do this, they would be like, oh, brilliant. They want to be part of the real world. And I think this is an important thing to look at as well. The fact that the schooling system originally was to save young people from having to work from the age of 6, being put in workhouses, being put in, you know, factories and things. So when it started, it was amazing and it was incredible that these children had that time to nurture themselves and their knowledge. The world's now kind of come full circle, and it's almost, if you imagine schools being like a spaceship, and we've got to bring it back down to earth. They actually want to be more connected to the world from a very young age, and that gives them a sense of importance and pride, and also confidence, because if you have these skills that you don't know where you're ever going to use them, you're going to feel insecure. So you have like all these university graduates, and they're ending up stacking shelves because they have no way of actually plugging into the real world.
I think that is.
But we're still of the mentality that education is good per se across the board. It actually sometimes is not. Sometimes it's not what's needed.
I have 2 more questions, because I'm getting hands waved at me. 100%. I'm wrapping up. Two more questions.
Yeah.
And they're very different. Which is, the first one is, do you think there's a consensus with control where you look at the military, right? If everyone wanted to be a general, you've got no soldiers. Then you've just got a load of generals that are not going to get anything done because they're constantly arguing over the strategy. So is there an element to society where you need a workforce? And if you taught every kid to build a business...
I love this question. Yeah. So what you're basically saying is there a need for exploitation?
I don't think I said exploitation. What I'm saying is that if you taught every child to build a business, then nobody goes to work for anyone else. And what does that do to to life, to building a business. You'd have no employees.
This could be a whole podcast in itself, actually, because this is to do with human value and actually what power you have within a society, or how you're valued. It's a very deep question. I say in an ideal world, we should all, this is probably a socialist or communist idea, we should all be equal to an extent, for sure. And I think AI and machines are going to take over a lot of the boring kind of manual kind of jobs anyway, which is going to free up a lot more people to be doing these things. I wouldn't say just business. I'd say creativity. I'd say making the world amazing. We could have amazing performances, music. The future could be incredible, actually.
Well, do you know what? My final question was going to be, like, what's your final opinion of everything? And I think you've just voiced it in the most wonderful way. So look, Sofia, thank you so much for coming in. I've really enjoyed this. I think there's so much value in everything that got said. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
On your mission.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to, fund or back any of my ideas, please get in touch.
I'll put your details when we send the link live. I'll put your details and everything to get in touch with you. Thank you.
All right.